A Nascent Kaleidoscope. Chapter 136. Lewd. I let out a long breath, looking around the rubble that was Harkin's castle. It had a name, a more grandiose one that was probably intentionally hard to pronounce, but I didn't care to even consider it. Perhaps I was being a bit dramatic. There was a large hole that caved in probably half the structure, but otherwise it was somewhat standing still. I was tired. I took a moment to let the fight replay in my head. It was a strange thing, to be so calm and peaceful among this place littered with corpses. Well, they were vampires. Not that I immediately assign a monstrous status to the species, but this lot elicited no remorse from me. Whether any got away or not, I don't know. But many seemed to be waiting for an opportunity, perhaps to kill the victor and claim everything themselves. Regardless, there were no other living beings on this island other than me. Harkin was surprisingly strong. Easily stronger than those two dragons, maybe even by several folds. He was skilled too. His movement with his sword shone with experience that required many years to achieve. His mastery of that blood magic, it was impressive. I've never delved into the subject, so it left a small impression on me. Honestly, I feel like the fight may have gone a few more rounds had he not been so rusty. Rusty, that was perhaps the best way I could describe it. He had the skill and strength, but I could make a few guesses that he hadn't actually fought or seriously trained in many, many years. And I attacked that Daedric prince. Probably not a smart idea, but the idea of him intentionally trying to harm Meridia set me off. My sword of destruction, I should have used it previously, not hid its abilities to hurt that thing just for some retribution. Even if I didn't activate it and merely used my power of destruction, it would have been a big help against his regeneration. I looked at a familiar sword on the ground, that katana variant that continuously tried to take my head before. I didn't touch it quite yet. It gave me an icky feeling. Not really demonic, not even bloodthirsty, just kind of gross. Don't think it's good enough to match up to my other swords, but my greedy nature still wants me to take it all the same. With a wave of my hand, I took it into my ring, along with the other valuables I acquired here. I raided his library, and boy was there a lot of stuff. I'm sure Jin will be overjoyed to shift through everything, especially when we set up our own little library in our house. And he had a treasury, like piles of gold kind of treasury. I was rich, very, very rich at this point. I didn't find that mace anywhere, not that I wanted it. My first thought was to toss it into a sun, in some random dimension, but I guess that God had the forethought to retrieve it before departing. With a sigh I stood up. I'm coming, muttered as Dawnbreaker visibly grew brighter. I could guess that Meridia was telling me to get a move on it. With a shake of my head, I quickly made myself presentable with some magical applications, and I opened up a portal back home. I almost didn't recognize where I was. The house that was empty before was now suddenly filled with furniture and actually looked lived in. Granted, it didn't appear modern, but it was definitely giving off a cozy feeling. My eyes turned to Meridia, who was sitting on the nearby sofa. Jen really moves quickly. I whistled, eyeing the place. I lent a hand, Meridia said calmly. I blinked at that, opting to take a seat next to her. She did say you two have been chatting. Meridia seemed out of it, for lack of a better term. She has an interesting perspective, Merida replied, not elaborating. She gave you a key too? Yes, I asked to borrow it. Does that bother you? Nope, not at all. I gave her a smile. I intended to give you one. I just wanted to make sure my defenses weren't broken. Your defenses. She pursed her lips. They are adequate, I suppose. Well, I don't expect them to hold back someone on your level, but at the very least I don't think you'd be able to look inside without my knowing. Meridia didn't outwardly react. It's as you say. Meridia. I scooted closer. What's wrong? I am distressed and I don't know how to feel. She glanced at me, then back at the ground. I should be overwhelmingly angry at you, doing something so foolish as to attack Molite Ball like you did. I let out a sigh. I may have not thought that through properly. But what happened? I assumed that you would have popped up as soon as Molite Ball made an appearance, especially with Dawnbreaker in my hand. Meridia briefly snarled, before evening her expression. He managed to play a small trick on me, preventing me from interfering. I appeared as soon as I tore down the gift he placed. It prevented any other of our kind from approaching the island. I see, it was a trap from the get-go, not just for me. I ran a hand through my hair. What's the chance he's already making another move? Unlikely. Meridia pursed her lips. He expended a large amount of power. He will not be able to manifest anything onto Nirn for many months. It's difficult to explain the shackles places on us here. Only the smallest bits of our power can fit through the net that covers this world. You could say he expended the allowance he was provided by the laws here, and he's currently destitute. I tugged on her gently. She allowed me to pull her in close. I keep worrying you, huh? She let out a small huff, but otherwise didn't object to my statement. I was able to watch. She said quietly, to say I did not enjoy you getting angry on my behalf would be a lie, even if I am angry at your actions. She pushed her head into my chest, her words slightly muffled. They continued to make my heart beat faster. You're my woman, I whispered, my fingers running through her hair. Even if he's stronger than me, I won't let someone get away with trying to hurt you. She made a small sound, as if she was unsure how to express her emotions. She pulled her head up, looking at me. Why must you keep doing this to me? To make me act as if I'm a young maiden, to bring a flush to my face and a warmth in my chest? Your previous words have left me locked inside my own thoughts. How often I drift to such whimsies as my belly being swollen, to have infants cradled in my arms. I often daydream of such things too. I couldn't help but smile. My Meridia trying to wrangle a handful of mischievous children. You taunt me with something I can't have. She pouted. For now, but that could change in the future. Her breathing hitched ever so slightly, her cheeks showing the faintest pink. You better take responsibility for putting such ideas into my head. I leaned in, stealing her lips for a brief moment. I'll show you how I take responsibility. I grinned, quickly sweeping her off her feet. She made another cute noise as she latched onto me to stop from falling. What do you think you're doing? She huffed. Taking you up to my bedroom. I replied as I made my way to the stairs. I want to fully make you mine. Pervert, she whispered, but her expression betrayed any semblance of reluctance. Warning: lewd content ahead. Contains vanilla sex. I held off long enough. I was going to take her and make her mine fully and thoroughly. Sliding into my bedroom, I gently placed her on the mattress, one of the few items I had held over from my birth world in this house. She laid back, looking at me with a mixture of expectance and shyness. Purely on this expression, I could never guess she was a goddess with so much power at her fingertips. I didn't immediately devour her, opting to gently place my lips against hers. She welcomed it, her hands finding sanctuary around my head, deepening the kiss. It was clear this was something she was yearning for as much as I was. Meridia, I whispered, breaking out mutual affection. I'm going to take you, goddess. You're going to be mine, now and forever. There was a sash, a piece of fabric that held her robes together, to stop them from opening. I gently reached for it, pulling it slowly off. Her breathing picked up as I pulled it free from its confines. Her clothing having nothing else to keep it secure, I began peeling it away. I admired everything about her, the sight burned into my memory forever. Her breasts bounced lightly as the fabric was pulled away, revealing her nipples, already hard from arousal, but I didn't stop there. My eyes trailed down, and my hand reached for her milky white legs. Are they everything you thought they would be? Meridia tried her best to look composed, but the red cheeks were throwing it off. Your constant perversions about my legs, they are available to you now. I gave her thigh a squeeze, earning a small yelp from her. Absolutely beautiful. I kissed her thigh, and continued to every few inches, slowing moving upwards. Every inch I moved up, she shuddered, like a shock going through her body until finally, her legs began to spread open, revealing her most sacred place. She had just the tiniest bit of hair on her mound, the same golden blonde that matched her head. Gently, I moved my hand to trace around her entrance, my thumb brushing against her clit. I continued to caress her inner thigh and lightly touched around her opening, enough that I noticed her arousal apparent. Looking at her content expression, the way her mouth hung slightly ajar, it emboldened me to continue, and I gently pushed a finger inside. HN. She let out a small noise in response, her breathing slightly picking up. I watched her reactions as I slowly moved within her folds, her visible shudders and jerks at each movement, until I found her most sensitive places. Ah! She breathed out, looking at me with a full flush and embarrassment on her face. She quickly turned away when I met her gaze. "Go slowly," she muttered. Her response made me question if she'd ever done this herself before. Her walls clenched around me as soon as I pushed inside, and as if they did not wish to let me go. The way she was subtly shaking her hips made me realize how much she was anticipating this. I began to pick up my pace, earning more light moans from my otherwise stoic woman. She tried her best to restrain herself, but the curling of her toes and the biting on her lip gave away the pleasure she was feeling. I decided to pick it up a notch, pushing another finger inside. "Ooh!" She jerked at the spreading of her slit. Her hands reached down, grabbing into me wherever she could. "W. Wilhelm," she gasped, nails practically digging into my skin. "Cease," she breathed out. I stopped at her words, her eyes almost glazed over, little pants escaping her lips. "I am sufficiently prepared," she said shyly, cheeks bright red. "Remove your garments." I was willing to continue, but it seemed like she was ready for the real thing. I started to undo my buttons, but her hand suddenly shot up, grabbing my tie and pulling me down into a passionate kiss. It quickly evolved as her tongue met mine for the first time. Her hands were not idle, grasping at the remainder of my buttons and forcibly pulling them apart. I didn't wish to break the kiss, so I quickly discarded my shirt, only for her hands to start roaming over my bare chest. I returned the favor, reaching out and gently caressing her breasts. It didn't take much for her to moan into my mouth, clearly unused to physical stimulation. I rolled one of her nipples between my fingers, giving her other breast a squeeze. A visible shudder ran through her body as she jolted in my grasp. Her own hands started to wander as well, one of them reaching between my legs to feel my member already standing up. My hands only stopped to start undoing my belt. Ever helpful, she yanked my pants away without a second thought. As bashful as she was being, there was a certain ferocity in her motions. "Are they all supposed to be this large?" she gaped, her hand running along my swollen member just as it was freed from my briefs. I twitched in her grip. Maybe it was from her touch, or the confidence boost she just gave me. "Meridia," I whispered, her hand gently moving up and down, not too hard, but enough to have a jolt run through my body. She seemed to find the perfect pressure to elicit a response from me while also not being painful. If the small smirk on her face was anything to go by, she quite liked the reaction she was receiving. After a few more moments, she paused her movement, letting go and allowing herself to fully fall back. "Come to me, Wilhelm." She opened up, her legs spread and inviting. "Claim me as no one else has." Her arms wide open. I didn't need to be told twice. I was already as hard as I could be. I leaned into her grasp, my cock lining up with her entrance. Her arms wrapped around me tight as I eased forward. She made a small, pained noise as my tip pushed into her, but made no motions to stop. My members slowly continued forward, her wet walls clenching tight around my shaft at even the tiniest movement. I didn't push myself all the way in, instead pulling back and thrusting a little forward again, easing her into it. The feeling was hard to describe. The pleasure was immense, as if her insides coiled around me and refused to let go. I don't know if it was my devil nature, but the feelings were much more intense than I could recall in my last life. Every movement was ecstasy. Her moans only served to exuberate the pleasure. Her hands found comfort digging into my back, squeezing at each thrust. And with each movement I pushed deeper and deeper into her until finally, my cock was filling her to the brim. Her soft moans turned into longer mewls, and she no longer attempted to hide them behind her normal fa-ade. "Ah," she let out, voice filling the room, and head placed on my shoulder. "HNN, ha!" She was lost in the intimacy, her own hips seeking to meet each of my trusts. "Wilhelm, more," she called out. "Meridia," I answered, our lips locking once again. Her tongue was attacked immediately as I entered her mouth, swirling them together. I wasn't going to last long at this rate. My hands found her own. As if an unspoken agreement, they interlocked tightly. "Wilhelm, she gasped, her back arching, a silent sound released from her throat. I didn't stop my movements, continuing at the same pace as to help her ride out her first orgasm. Her walls clenched down on me tightly, the pressure increased enough that it was starting to push me over the edge. Even when she almost went limp, eyes unfocused, She never stopped moving her hips. I let out a grunt, squeezing her hands as I too began to let it out, pushing my cock all the way inside her. "Ah!" she moaned as my seed filled her womb, my cock pulsing with each spurt of semen filling her deepest parts. I thrust several more times, finish off everything I had, making sure every ounce of it was all the way inside her, as if to mark it as mine. Letting out a long breath, I fell forward, resting my head between her breasts. That was... Meridia seemed to catch her breath, the sound of her heartbeat thumping in my ear. She paused as her hand ran along her own stomach and down between her legs, where I was still fully sheathed inside her. "You are still erect." "I am." I grinned. Don't underestimate a devil, much less a draconic one. I wished to be on top this time. She stated, it was going to be a long night, but I was more than happy about that. Chapter 137. Meridia POV. Sleep was not something I often partook in, seemingly always have matters that required my undivided attention. Even being able to partition myself off to handle most issues, the core of myself would be in slumber. Even as I awoke, and these thoughts briefly drifted through my mind, I did not bother giving them any more heed. How I had, for the first time, truly skirted my duties. I did have capable individuals under me, worshippers who had been taken under my banner even after death. But there were simply many things that required my presence to continue working. Still, my attention was occupied by the person who shared the bed I was also sleeping in. Wilhelm, my lover. The warm thought makes my heart beat faster, especially as I recall what had occurred the previous night, and much of the morning. We were still covered in a sticky mess, yet I was content, happy. The pleasant ache between my legs a vivid reminder of how we made love far into the early morning hours, and other perverse acts. I resisted the urge to pinch him, daring to use my thighs to pleasure himself, regardless of how it made my loins drip. How utterly ridiculous! Why he finds my legs so tantalizing, I do not understand. This body of mine, as fake as it was, caused me sensations I had never contemplated before meeting this ridiculous man. I had created it eons ago, a whim as I wanted to understand mortals better. I spent many days decided how I wished to appear upon my followers, my faithful. It is of course a fully working fleshly body. Even if I did not foresee partaking in carnal pleasures with another person, I do not do things by halves. This body is not me, but I may have come to think of myself as this body. And never before has someone gazed upon this nude form of mine, and now a single person has that honor. Humph! My ridiculous lover, he truly does not know how lucky he is. How many wish to earn even a second glance from yet he will commit perversions upon me without any hesitation. For any other being in existence, I would have destroyed them. I can only swallow my indignation and take pity on him, allowing him his continued blasphemy. It is only out of my goodwill that he is allowed to molest me, to steal my lips at his whim, to accept his touch when he desires it. And I most certainly do not turn into a blushing maiden at his provocations, and I shall smite any who says otherwise. His foolish smile certainly did not elicit any reaction from me, neither did the way he refused to allow me out of his embrace as he buried his face into my breasts. Nor did I tenderly run my hand down his admittedly attractive chest. He stirred from his slumber, opening his eyes and giving me a bright smile with a hint of his cockiness. That smug look on his face as he admired what he had done to me, even with his eyes half leaden. "Ready for round 2? He asked, clearly intent on eliciting a response from me. "Were you not satisfied from before?" I huffed in annoyance, unable to escape his machinations. "Gotta make babies," he mumbled, pressing his head further into my bosom. "Your seed still fills me. What more could you possibly do?" I pursed my lips, this perverse man seeking any excuse to initiate further relations. I fear I have opened a dam, and the torrent will no longer be plugged. The matter of me unable to bear his children goes unsaid. Give me an hour and find out. He giggled, squeezing me tighter. "As if you would last that long." I scoffed, hand running through his striking red hair, hearing his continued giggling into my breasts. "Wilhelm," I quietly called out. "Don't wanna. You do not know what I'm going to say." I poked his forehead. "You gotta go." He grumbled. "Yes." I didn't deny. I guess it was an obvious conclusion to come to. I have ignored many matters in my absence. It was pleasant knowing that I was not required to explain myself. My lover had an understanding of what I was, what I did, so while he would bemoan my leave, he knew I had important duties to attend to. A small part of me was happy that he desired me to stay by his side so vehemently. I could only just sigh. I wondered what things would be like if I just threw my hands up and ceased my role. To live by his side, follow him on his adventures through various other universes. My strange man who comes from a distant light of creation. How long you gonna be gone? His word not matching the usual eloquence he approaches with his speech. I'm sure he was still quite tired from our previous activities. As unique his origin was, I do not believe he would be unaffected by our time together. I do not know, perhaps a few days. I would make sure nothing significant occurred, and finish my tasks as quickly as possible. Fine, he stated. Want to take a shower before you go? Shower? I questioned, confused by what he asked. Running water that's heated up and sprayed down overhead for cleaning purposes. He explained, I am able to cleanse myself without mortal means. It would take me but a thought to remove all this filth. The only reason I have not done so yet is because I did not wish to disturb his content look. It was certainly not because I wished to enjoy the feeling of being so full for a few moments longer. It's one of life's greatest pleasures, he stated, making me pause in consideration. A few more minutes will not make any substantial difference. I acquiesced, though the way I felt something poking into my belly, I think it may just take a little bit longer. Wilhelm POV. I watched Meridia fluff her hair out. I guess I've never contemplated the idea of Meridia drying herself off after taking a shower, as strange as it was, and I just wanted to admire the scene. Merida glared over in my direction, but the way she puffed up her cheeks in annoyance cleared away any sense of true anger she might have. I should knock that smug grin off your face. She huffed, tricking me into doing that, in such a place. She grumbled. Oh, and who was refusing to let me go once we started? I raised an eyebrow. Do not speak nonsense. She threw a pillow at me from across the room. In the moments I caught the pillow and tossed it to the side, Meridia was already dressed as she had been before last night. I walked up wrapping my arms around her. Even with her annoyance, she accepted quite readily. If you need me for anything, I'm always here. She looked at me quietly, a contemplative expression on her face. I appreciate the gesture. She settled on, and I knew that was something along the lines of, you will not be able to help. I wasn't offended in the slightest, but I wanted her to know I was here for her if she really did need anything. We need to have a discussion about certain things later, when I have more time. Is there something wrong? No, it's just, now you are in the sights of the other lords, all teased of Molide Ball, I wish you to further understand. She said quietly, and for some reason you still deem it appropriate to extend this relationship with a being known for his slavery, and torture comes after you because of me. She snorted. I wonder if he'll be able to put two and two together based on what I said? I may not have planned that out well. Molide Ball is many things, stupid being among them. But he will come to certain conclusions rather quickly, even if the correct one is not the one he will first assume. He won't think you're my woman, but that I'm some kind of boy toy? I chuckled. Must you say it in such a way? She huffed. I suggest you not venture near any of his claimed lands, or his worshippers. He will have more power among his followers than out here in the open. I do not recall any meaningful encampments in Skyrim beyond those vampires, so we should be safe from his meddling for the time being. I planned on either being with Thorum or the college for a bit. Truthfully, I felt kind of off since the battle with Harkon. Replaying the fight in my head, how rusty he appeared when truly fighting, it made me come to some conclusions myself. Good. She nodded. I will keep an eye on Artoria and Rin. You're the best. I beamed at her. Humph, I am merely keeping my new harem sister safe. I blinked at her statement. Did Jin teach you that term? It definitely sounds like something she'd say. Yes, Jin has been helpful and understand different terminology you are used to. Oh, sweet Christ, what's Jin telling her? Now, I must truly leave this time. She stated. Kiss? I asked. She rolled her eyes, but the smallest quirk of her lips betrayed her once again. She leaned in for a quick kiss, merely a moment before we separated, but it relayed much affection. I'll miss you. I smiled. And I you. She returned, much of her embarrassment having faded since the first time we uttered those words. With one last nod, she made for the door, disappearing outside as to not blow through my defenses. What a woman! Well done! Oh, I forgot about you. And my feelings are now hurt. Yeah, okay. I sighed. What's up? Nothing. Just wanted to congratulate you. It's not every day a boy becomes a man. Oh, fuck off. Hee hee. Drake practically giggled to himself. I forgot you're basically a voyeur. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't hear you act up last night. I scoffed. Did you expect me to start giving commentary? Drake laughed. Or maybe some words of encouragement. Go, Wilhelm, go. Show her the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, woo. Oh, my God. I sighed. Nope, it's Drake. To give up the boosted gear, or not to give up the boosted gear. I tapped my chin. Oh, stop being a little bitch. I think I felt Drake roll his eyes. I grumbled, but ignored his comment. Drake, I was thinking about some stuff. Have I gotten complacent? You mean, did you drive decrease? Yeah, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life, and I feel strong for lack of a better word. Did I just stop trying? It's not weird for both dragons and devils to be content where they are. Hell, even humans are oftentimes fine with just coasting along with some success in life. If you were happy to stay as is, I wouldn't make a comment. I forget sometimes that Drake isn't here to hold my hand and carry me through life. He sees me as a partner, but my life is mine to live with all the mistakes that come with it. If I asked advice, he would give it. Help me work through some things, sure. But my choices were always mine to make in the end, and he never encroached on that. I guess seeing Molag Bal and Harkon made me realize I can't keep sitting still, I guess. I haven't been practicing my aura as I should. I've just been using it as a shield. My Thursday fell to the wayside, and I feel like there's still magic I could learn here. What are you going to do about it? Go see the Archmage. Maybe he has some high-end stuff I haven't touched on. I also want his opinion on some stuff I nabbed from Harkon's castle. I guess I wouldn't mind donating a bit to the college as well. Maybe keep their prices down since some of this dragon shit is my fault. I paused, running a hand through my hair. I don't know how much talent I actually have in utilizing the Thursdayum, but it's an avenue I should pursue, seeing how it operates similarly to my primordial runes. The shout that Thorum used to move so quickly, that definitely caught my interest. I need to push myself in training as well. I do my exercises, but I need to take this opportunity to really push my body when I have the chance. My potential hasn't been realized yet. My physical capabilities still are not at the peak of what a devil can achieve. Well said. I had another firm resolve in my chest. I wanted to continue to get stronger, to not become stagnant in my strength. First off, let's go see the Archmage. I actually didn't just use the kaleidoscope to go right in. Instead, used the entrance I procured for Jin. Oh, hello, Wilhelm. The Archmage greeted me. A strange contraption pointed at the door. Sup? I blinked at the thing he was tinkering with. Whatcha doin'? I asked. Not much, trying to figure out how this door operates. I've tried 17 different theories, and all of them proved incorrect. He seemed giddy. I have high hopes for this one. Honestly, it sounds like he was having a lot of fun. With everything going on right now, I'm sure he can't really leave the college and probably feels cooped up. Well, I don't really care he's not hurting anything, and I trust this man. If he actually asked me for my secrets, I don't know if I would deny him. You seem in a chipper mood. How are the dragons? He idly asked, continuing his tinkering. Not too strong. Thorum could have handled them without me, but it was interesting to see their application of the Thursdayum. There was one shout that took me by surprise, targeting my vitality, which was a noticeable hole in my defenses. Oh yes, I can imagine that. He rubbed his chin. Not many take precautions against such esoteric effects. Those kinds of attacks are mostly used with blood mages, or their kin. If you ever come across a vampire, be sure they don't take your drain your vitality by surprise. Huh? What? He looked up at me. Speaking of vampire, the Archmage paused, staring at me. What did you do? Why do you automatically assume I did something? Wilhelm. His lips thinned. There is a thing called a pattern that... I opened my mouth and scoffed. I hate that I can't argue with you. Indeed. He smirked. Now, what happened? Ever heard of a vampire by the name of Harkon? Why, yes. I have heard of the strongest vampire in Skyrim, whom I have personally had to return the head of a vampire to because he sought out something in my library by turning one of my students into a thrall. He deadpanned. "Oh, well, that makes things easier." "Does it?" he asked, skeptically. "He's dead, so you tell me." The Archmage let out a long sigh, reaching his hand out and summoned forth a bottle of mead, once again, downing it with vigor. "That can't be healthy," I pointed out. "Neither is your existence in my life, but here we are." I couldn't help but laugh, one shared by him. "I do hope you were not harmed," the Archmage stated. "Nothing significant, even if Molagbal showed up to lend him a hand." I had to stop myself from growling. I was just a pawn to strike a blow at Meridia. I guess they saw me waving Dawnbreaker around and put 2 and 2 together. "Ah, yes. The conflicts between your paramour and the Lord of Rape are well documented." He didn't seem fazed by what I said. He should have been a master blood mage. I'm curious how the fight went. I won, but it felt like he let himself go, kinda rusty all around if I were to be honest. Well, I won't say it's a shame, but I do so wish his magics were passed down to someone not so. Arrogant, genocidal, stuck-up vampiric. I offered. "Quite." He pursed his lips. "If it makes you feel better, I raided his castle of everything important, including his library. That does make me feel better." He perked up immediately. "I don't suppose you would be willing to share some of the tomes hoarded by that old vampire." Sure, I was going to have Jin sort everything, set up my own little library. Anything of importance I'm sure we could duplicate, so the library has some copies as well. Though I wanted to make sure nothing, too absurd is made readily available. "Wilhelm, do you really think I allow free access to the most powerful and self-destructive spells allowed to beings of our caliber? So you do have a hidden stash." I raised an eyebrow. "Of course. It's not so hidden, though, once a member of the college reaches a certain level in maturity." He looked at me intently. I allowed them to peruse. I held my hand out. Gold literally began to flow out like water, filling the area between us into a large pile and continued to spill outwards. The Archmage stared at me, then the gold, and back at me again. "As I was saying, you're a highly valued member of our college." We shared a look and started laughing again. "In seriousness, Wilhelm, you merely had to ask." I figured, but I also wanted to make a donation. I scratched my cheek. "I still feel kind of guilty, and I hope you can maybe keep prices down a bit, maybe coordinate some help for the common folk who were affected." "Wilhelm, that is a very admirable thing to do." His eyes softened. "I would be delighted to ensure this happens. I still have many contacts outside of Skyrim. It may take a few days, but I believe I can bring some fresh supplies inbound to Skyrim, even with their absurd costs right now." Yeah. I definitely didn't preen under his praise. "So, about those spells you keep locked away." I grinned. Chapter 138. I took a deep breath, sweat dripped down my brow. I ignored the few stray strands of hair that fell down on my face. My legs crossed, wings out as I hovered about 10 feet into the air, a floating book in front of me and the boosted gear on my arm. I ignored the pain in my body as I turned the page. There was a small twitch in one of my wings, and I fell about an inch before catching myself. My swords floated around me, my mental strength also keeping them afloat. But that was not all. My sword of destruction was channeling my aura, so my power of destruction was activated around the blade. It didn't run wild. Instead, it was coherent, complacent. It was evenly distributed all around, coating it in the blackish hue, only instigated into action by my will. "Do it again." I took another deep breath. "Boost," I called out, doubling my capabilities once more. This must have been the 8th boost now, and I felt my body grow stronger, but at the same time, the strain was enough that I let out a growl. As the power flowed through another force was exerted. The runes I set up all around this room lit up, and a torrent of gravity descended upon me, threatening to force me onto the ground. I gripped my teeth, adjusting to the new force, not letting myself fall too far, and not allowing my swords to fall either. My focus did not waver, my power of destruction did not go out of control, and I adjusted to the new weight around me. This room, an empty place I had found in the college to train. I had received permission from the Archmage to set this little place up. All around me were runes, designed to adjust the force of gravity on an individual. It was a bit annoying getting set up right, but I couldn't complain about the results. Normally, such a thing would have been tedious, but otherwise simple. What I had done was add a secondary sequence that increases every time I use Boost, except it doesn't merely match my new strength. If I use the boosted gear to increase my abilities by a factor of 2, the gravitational exertion is increased by 2.1, meaning I could train myself in multiple ways, both from the stress of the boosted gear and the force exerted on me. And that didn't even take into account my mental exertion to keep my swords up, my flight up, and my power of destruction going. I pushed off the thoughts of pain, instead focusing on the book in front of me. One of several I had acquired from the Archmage's personal library, or rather the books he keeps segregated so new initiates can't just get their hands on them by accident. They weren't all blow the city up kind of thing. A lot of them were spells that an initiate could use, but were extremely dangerous and needed a firmer grasp on magical arts to fully understand and utilize without harming yourself. And then there were others that were just malicious by design. I'm not one that likes to label spells evil, but there were certainly some horrible spells in his collection. Not that I faulted him for keeping them, they were useful for understand and learning from, even if you never intended to use them. Like there was a spell that forced another person to fall in love with you. It was a disgusting amalgamation of different mind control magics with an unhealthy dose of brain chemistry altering. But on the flip side, it had a very interesting thought process on combining spells without conflicting with one another, but instead becoming greater than the sum of its parts. The spell I was studying at the moment was called Lightning Form. It was a spell derived from the lightning cloak, spell I was quite familiar with. To put it bluntly, it forces the body to take on the properties of lightning, so to speak. It would heavily increase my affinity to the element, but it was irreversible from what I read. The downside was the fact that the process was extremely painful and dangerous, not to mention I wouldn't be able to use a similar spell, otherwise I'd probably die. Using terms from my homeworld, it would force the concept of lightning onto my being with everything good and bad that comes with that. My element would thus change, not replacing the old one, but adding a second. There were many factors that come into play when dealing with something like this, but I had many tools at my disposal to mitigate the detriments. What do you think, Drake? It's not a bad idea. I'm sure I don't need to tell you about all the dangers and everything, but you seem more particular towards the element of lightning. It will make other elements a little harder to utilize, but that doesn't mean much. And since your runes aren't direct elemental manipulation, they won't be affected, but would be enhanced due to your lightning affinity when using some of your personal spells. Yeah, most of the detriments are about gaining the ability, not the effects of simply having it. Which admittedly were a long list. Not many mages could boast what I could when it came to preparation. Hell, my aura mitigated an awful lot of problems talked about in the book. You're up again. I grunted, gritting my teeth, preparing. Boost! I called out, holding it for a moment until the gravity descended upon me again. I let out a pained cry as I slammed into the stone floor below, cracking the surface. The magic's turned off by a safety measure built in by design. Release! I breathed out, letting the boosts fade and leaving my body aching. My swords impaled themselves onto the ground near me, my power of destruction dissipating and retreating along the linkage of my aura, returning to me. Not bad. You lasted longer than yesterday by a noticeable margin. I rolled over, back onto the ground, letting my body sprawl out. This is the for TH day. 5th day. Dre corrected. Oh, time just seemed to blend together. I muttered, letting my breath return to something normal. I moved my arms but was only greeted by an aching pain. No pain, no gain as they say. I let out a sigh, sitting myself up. Wilhelm. I heard a familiar voice call out, opening the wooden door. Turning around, I saw the Archmage enter. Have you come to check up on your prisoner? I asked. Wilhelm. The Archmage gave me a dry look. Just because this room was a holding cell some centuries ago does not make you a prisoner. He deadpanned. The outside world. I can't handle it anymore. Let me stay here. It's all I know. I gasped. Okay. He didn't even bat an eye at my antics. Shall I tell Miss Artoria and Tosaka that you have opted for a life behind bars? Boo! I pursed my lips, rolling back over gain. My arms were shaking, and my legs wobbly as I stood up. Oh, Wilhelm. The Archmage came over to steady me. How much did you push yourself? Well, I'm still breathing, so probably not enough. I chuckled. At least, I think that's how Scathack would look at it. The Archmage sighed. Wilhelm, I can't claim to know much about your biology. He cast a look at my wings still out. But this can't be healthy to sustain over long periods. Long periods mean different things for dragons. Drake chimed in. The Archmage blinked, staring at my gauntlet. I can't argue with that logic. Still, perhaps a break is in order? As I said, Miss Artoria and Miss Tosaka have returned, and they have had a wonderful experience if their excitement is anything to go by. All right, I'll head there in a moment. I nodded. I hadn't seen Artoria in over a week. I missed my little knight, and I wanted to hear about Rin's adventures. I hope she had a fulfilling time. The Archmage nodded. I see you were reading Lightning Form. What do you think? It's an interesting avenue to pursue, and I can seemingly sidestep many of the detriments with some effort and preparation. Yes, I thought that one may catch your eye. He rubbed his chin, a small smile on his face. I had to take it from the library when I had a pair of brothers try to learn it together some decades ago. Oh, geez, how bad did that end? Well, they at least managed to get a basic lightning bolt down before attempting it. He sighed. I managed to save their lives, but their ability to manipulate Magica was thoroughly shattered. He eyed me sternly. I appreciate the cautionary tale, but I'm not going to just jump head first into this. I tried to alleviate his concerns. I have many things available to me to not suffer any horrific setbacks, even if I decided to throw caution to the wind. As long as you are careful. He nodded, clearly pleased with my words. I also look forward to your thoughts after you succeed. If we could tweak it, it would be a wonderful spell for those who specialize in lightning destruction. That's true. He probably didn't have any data to even start an endeavor. Well, I wouldn't mind helping him out. If nothing else, I do love to discuss magic. Sure, I'll make sure to note my attempts down and to have everything documented so we can go over it at some point. Wonderful, he cheerfully replied. Now, let's not keep your lady friends waiting. I happily pushed over the doors to the cafeteria, because where else would I find Artoria? Joking aside, I think they were just here to unwind with some space to set some stuff out. The Archmage was already here, and as soon as I walked in I drew their attention. Wilhelm. Artoria perked up, a smile on her face, and my heart just melted. I held my arms out, and she happily moved forward into my embrace. Artoria. I did squeeze her tight. Missed you. Did you have fun? She let out a small noise in confirmation, only breaking our hug after another moment. Come, we have a grand tale to regale you with. She grabbed my hand, pulling me over to the table. I took another look at them. Artoria wasn't in her usual armor. She was sporting some local leathers with some other comfortable-looking furs to not stand out so much, along with a hooded cloak adorning her back. Rin too looked interesting. I met her eyes briefly, and she returned a haughty smile, hand on her hip and a happy gleam in her eye. She looked much different. Full leather armor, but with what looked like a mage's robe fitted over, acting like a cloak. I could only tell because of the parts not covered, her arms, a bit of her chest, her legs. She was clearly decked out in armor, and from what I could tell, it was clearly enchanted. I briefly wondered if it was by her own hand or not. She had a staff in her hand I did not recognize, but it seemed pretty decent. Her noble phantasm was on her back, for ease of use. She had a dagger at her hip, and other accessories all around. But the most eye-catching item was the amulet that hung from her neck. What a feeling it gave when I inspected it. Obviously, she was allowing me this kind of poking, otherwise such an action could be easily differed. I think I'm jealous. I blinked as I eyed that ridiculous thing around her neck. Am I allowed to be jealous? I looked down at Artoria. She just let out a small laugh. I'll allow it. Rin flipped her hair back, obviously emphasizing the thing even more. I rolled my eyes, but I was happy Rin seemed a lot more alive than when I saw her last. All right, I want answers. I jabber my finger at her amulet. The hell is that thing? Because it's frankly ridiculous. I almost thought it was a Daedric artifact. No, but it is an item of legendary proportions. The Archmage chimed in. Miss Tosaka was kind enough to allow me a few cursory looks. I said you could look at it as much as you wanted. Rin huffed. The Archmage chuckled. I have enough. I merely was interested in its overall creation. Without breaking it apart, I can't get much more from it unless you were willing to part from it for a few years. Rin looked aghast at the thought, earning another chuckle from the old mage. All right, you can show off. Tell me what it does. I sat down at the table, Rin joining me quite quickly. The Archmage just stood nearby, content on watching and hearing the story while Artoria slid in next to me as we shared another small smile. From what I've discovered so far, Rin began, it provides a potent passive healing effect. A small cut would heal in moments. A broken arms would probably take a few hours, and I haven't tested any missing limbs for obvious reasons. She stated, clearly in a type of lecture mode. Interesting. Have you tried other avenues of healing? Like his hair restored or fingernails? It would be interesting if it stops the process of aging. I asked. Rin paused pondering those questions. I'll need to test it more. She admitted, and I just nodded as she continued. My physical stamina is higher. I noticed I could hike through the mountains a lot longer before feeling winded. I can vouch for this one. Artoria chimed in. She went from needing a break every few hours to going nearly all day without issue. Fascinating. I rubbed my chin. I'm sure that isn't it, though. I ginned at her. I could tell she was holding something back. My capacity for magical energy at least doubled while wearing this thing. She looked rather smug. It has a sort of magic-hop pool I can draw from and refills separately from my own, but doesn't conflict when I actualize any of my spells. Now that is really interesting. Does it refill separately from your own, or does it fill up by siphoning your own magical energy? It draws from the world. My own OD is left untouched. Rin confirmed. I admit to being a little jealous. Maybe it was just my hoarding nature acting up in front of a treasure. But I was honestly happy for her too. She also looked a lot more spirited, like a weight was off her shoulders. The treasures are good and all, but how about the details? Tell me of your adventure. I shot her a smile and she beamed back at me. Well, it started when we went looking for a tomb called Falgunther over by Solitude. Artoria reached out under the table, sliding her hand into mine as our fingers intertwined, and she laid her head on my shoulder as we let Rin begin to recount the tales of her adventure. Seeing Rin excitedly start to recant the tale, I couldn't help but smile. Even with how fatigued I was feeling at this moment, everything just felt right in the world. Chapter 139. So we made it to this big tomb, lots of undead everywhere. Rin had explained their journey to delve into this lost crypts. I thought the place was already cleared out, because there were no zombies walking around. Draugr, I corrected. Draugr. She nodded. So there were no Draugr walking around. We walk into a new room, lots of coffins, and there was a treasure chest. Oh gods, did you go straight for it? I face-palmed. She went straight for it. Artoria said dryly. Rin turned a little red. As soon as I touched it, all the coffins in the room had their lids kicked open and a stupid amount of Draugrs all stepped out. So you engaged them? I nodded to her words. In such an enclosed space, I assume you stuck to your spear and perhaps some small cantrips? No. Artoria deadpanned. They startled me. Rin defended herself, casting a huff towards Artoria. They startled you? I gave her a dry look. And what happened when they startled you, Dot? Blew them the hell up. Rin preened. I looked towards Artoria. That is an unfortunately apt description of what occurred. Artoria sighed. She screamed and threw one of her rubies into the middle of the room, destroying most of them in the blast. Saber! Rin huffed. We shared a laugh at her expense, but she didn't seem particularly distressed. I think this trip of hers was the best thing that's happened to her in many months. How about the traps? Those places are usually infested with the things. Oh God! Tell me about it. Rin groaned. Who puts jars of oil hanging on the ceiling? I just started saying fuck it, and forced my way through them all. Yes, Rin shared a similar mindset. Artoria sighed again. Blew them up. I hazarded a guess. Hee hee. Rin let out an awkward laugh. All right. So navigated the ancient tomb filled with undead and traps. What was at the end? I asked. Well, according to the journals, these places were actually prisons for the sons of this amulet's original owner and maker. Rin explained. I don't know the specifics, but they took the amulet when he died and broke it up into 3 pieces. They were tyrants, ruling over the land until they were finally put down and sealed away. Fascinating. The Archmage finally spoke up, content to just listen in with amusement. You still possess these journals? Of course. Rin puffed up. I knew you would want them. But everything's kind of jumbled together in my bag after an accident. If you don't mind, I can get them to you after sorting everything. No rush. The Archmage waved her off. Please continue. This Draugr was able to use magic, and he was really good. He was able to teleport short distances, and his elemental mastery was surprising. Rin let out a sigh. Honestly, I was taken by surprise. If not for Saber's magic resistance, I don't know if it would have gone as smoothly. Well, you know better now, right? I doubt any more magic-wielding undead took you by surprise from then on. I tried to soothe. She did well. Artoria also chimed in. The fight was not long, but she was able to support me as we took it down and claimed the amulet piece and its treasure as our own. They were durable, but not very fast. Rin added, reinforcement is quite the good spell. Most people using magic here had just bluntly forced the magical energy to elevate their body beyond normal means. That, or they simply exist at a much higher starting place similar to how humans were back home in the Age of Gods. Really, the most thorough strengthening spell I found here was Ebony Flesh and its lesser equivalents. And even that mainly strengthened, as opposed to reinforcement that increased every aspect of the body. It's quite curious now that I think about it, but thoughts for later. Draugr have an innate resistance against magic themselves as well. I tapped my chin. Their necrotic nature simply makes spells have a lesser effect, though I suppose it's slightly different than actual magic resistance. Well, they burned well enough. Rin shrugged. Yup, that'll do it. They're weak against fire, for obvious reasons. There are probably some spells in the Restoration School that also repel and harm them. Since the healing magic is the antithesis to undead, they should be able to deal quite a bit of damage. I didn't think about that. Rin looked lost in thought for a moment. I'll have to test that at some point. She muttered to herself. Well, regardless, what happened next? We basically did the same thing again. Took a couple days of traveling, though we found someone willing to take us in cart most of the way there for some gold. Same kind of crypt, but this one had a bow and teleported around. Was kind of annoying because it made clones of itself, but none of them were actually real until only one remained. Did you find any books or anything about a spell like that? No, Rin grumbled. And I looked all over, turned up every stone. She means that literally. Artoria added, Well done. I gave Rin a thumbs up, one she mirrored with a grin. More treasure, though? Hell yes. Rin pumped her fist in the air. Lots of good things. Gold, jewels, weapons, that kind of stuff. You're going to be so jealous. Am I now? I raised an eyebrow. Shall I tell you of my adventure when you're done? My lips curled up. What? What did you do when we were gone? Not much, just killed the oldest vampire in Skyrim, looted his castle. I casually inspected my nails. Bullshit! Rin slammed her hands on the table. I call bullshit. I let Harkin's sword fall onto the table. Oh no, the blade I got off that vampire lord. I feigned surprise. How did that get there? One of these days, Schweinorg, you and me. She raised her fist up threateningly. And put that thing away, it feels really weird. Yeah, it does. I didn't argue putting it back in my ring. Was going to have Meridia see if she could cleanse it of all the icky stuff. Are you going to add it to your growing arsenal? Artoria asked. Maybe just my collection, not to something I use for true combat. I scratched my cheek. I was just interested in the fact that it was a katana, or something similar. A bit straighter and shorter, but also not a wakizashi, if slightly bigger than a normal one. That is true. I think Gram was a better sword, and you opted to not set it to the side. Artoria agreed. Speaking of, I actually gave it to Thorum. It liked that fact that he apparently eats dragon souls. Curious. I would like to meet him at some point. Artoria gave a small smile. Of course. I think both of you would like him. He's a great guy. Yeah, we can meet your guy crush later. Let me finish my story. Rin interjected. All right, Miss Grumpy, continue on. I gestured for her to continue. Funnily enough, she wasn't actually upset or even put off by our little back and forth. I think before she held back some thinly veiled jealousy, but now it was just sort of our dynamic. All right, so we got the last 2 pieces of the amulet, but we needed to find a way to put them together. There was actually some notes and stuff left behind. A 3rd tomb we were led to. Some sort of ritual site that required the pieces of the amulet to actualize. Once we did that, it seems like the spirits of those brothers were still latched onto the pieces, so they sort of piggybacked off the ritual to create a ghost-like body. Can you describe the ritual in detail? The Archmage asked. I had forgotten he was there briefly. Actually, I don't think he was all the way here, like a sort of avatar merely listening in when something interesting came up. I made a rough sketch before we left along with the notes to it, and I wrote down some of my own observations as well. Rin stated, "Oh my, well done, Miss Tosaka." The Archmage gave out well-deserved praise. "It truly is a boon to have you in my college." Rin puffed up happily. "Of course." The fight was a little difficult. Artoria began. There were 3 opponents who were adept in magic and had some amount of martial skill behind them. Not to mention they lacked several weaknesses a living person would have, such as stamina. But they also lacked any kind of coordination. There were points where they almost fell over one another. Rin let out a little snort. The one with the bow actually shot the one with a sword in the head. The most difficult aspect was their teleporting. Artoria had a slight smile on her face. The room we fought them in was rather large, so they had quite a bit of room to maneuver. I took out the one with the bow and Artoria took out the other 2. Once we finished, the ritual combined the amulet and here we are. Rin finished. Well, it doesn't sound like they had any major issues, but they also left out a lot of details. But it would probably take hours to recount every little thing. And you guys didn't face anything outside of these tombs? No dragons? The skies were clear the entire time. I made sure to keep a watch out. Artoria reassured me. Yeah, the worst we ran into was a troll, but you blew it the fuck up. I finished for her. Damn straight. Rin smirked. What about you? Was this vampire strong? Yeah. I let out a sigh. And he was backed by a Daedric lord, someone who's an enemy of Meridia and wanted to lure me out. A trap I walked right into. He was a bit rusty though, so I was able to defeat him without much issue, but his mastery over blood magic was eye-opening. Blood magic? Rin repeated. Exactly as it sounds, to manipulate blood. You can think of it as a branching school of thought from water manipulation, though it comes with its own good and bad points due to the nature of blood. Will, a person suddenly burst through the doors, her eye-catching blue skin making me recognize her immediately. Jen! I smiled brightly at her. Her eyes swept at those of us gathered. Rin, Artoria! She practically squealed in delight, running over and giving each a big hug. Rin looked a little surprised at first, but happy all the same. Artoria welcomed it without any fuss. Hello, Jin. Artoria greeted. Jen. Rin nodded her way. I'm glad you both are back. Jin's smile was really contagious. Did you have fun? Were there new books you found? What's that around your neck? Did you fight any of those undead? What about spells? Did you learn anything new? Or did you find any good treasure? She immediately began bombarding them with questions. Was always happy to see my genie this bright and ecstatic. Oh! Jin interrupted her own rambling. I actually had a quick question. She looked at me. I was going through the notes and journals from Hark and stuff you left at the house, and I got kind of stuck because it mentioned something about an elder scroll, but I can't find. Pardon? The Archmage interrupted. Did you say an elder scroll? He seemed much more contracted on us than he was previously. But honestly, the hell was an elder scroll? Chapter 140. An elder scroll. The Archmage rubbed his beard. I am surprised to find out that none of you have heard of them. While most knowledge has entered the realm of legends, people these days at least know the barest whispers. I guess they're common knowledge around here. He closed his eyes for a moment before setting a large book down on the table that appeared out of nowhere. Opening it up, he skimmed several pages, finger running down the lines of the page. Here we are, he exclaimed. Also called the Edric Prophecies, are scrolls of unknown origin which simultaneously archive both the past and future events. The number of the scrolls is unknown not necessarily due to their immense quantity, but because the number itself is unknowable, as the scrolls do not exist in countable form. They are fragments of creation from outside time and space, and their use in divining prophecies is but a small part of their power. They simultaneously do not exist, yet always have existed. Fascinating. These scrolls exist outside of time and space, thus are able to chronicle the flow of the world somehow. That poses an interesting question. If someone reads from one of these elder scrolls, does that make the future, or is the scroll merely describing inevitable events? The chicken or the egg? Does bringing the scroll's content into reality force that recorded prophetic outcome to occur? So, they are basically cast off power from the divines when this world was created. Perhaps they crystallized and took on a new form. Existing outside of time and space means they can see the whole flow of events, latch onto something of some significance, something that has enough power or consequence in the world's existence to draw these wisps of divine power. Maybe the scrolls don't even exist as scrolls, but are merely perceived as such based on limited mortal comprehension. The Archmage blinked at me, seemingly surprised by my words. An interesting theory. He nodded. Alas, it is one of the mysteries of our world. All we know is that they contain valuable information and cause anyone who reads them to lose their sight. A curse from the divines, they say, for peering into the future. Is it a curse, or is it just a side effect of looking into something mortals weren't supposed to see? Artoria asked. An interesting question. The Archmage smiled, but he just shrugged. We don't know. The nature of these elder scrolls simply makes them nearly impossible to study. Even in the past, when there was a library full of them in the Empire, their nature simply made it unfeasible. I had a sudden thought. The prophecy regarding Thorum, it came from an elder scroll, didn't it? The Archmage gave a huge grin. I was wondering if you would guess that before I mentioned anything. He stroked his beard. Yes, it is an old prophecy, so much so that even the Nordic legends speak of it. I do not know when the scroll mentioning it was read, but it was many centuries ago. As interesting as this is, why is it important? Rin asked. Harkon was the name of the vampire lord I killed. I answered, tapping my chin. The question is, why was he looking for something like that? His notes are vague, at best. Jin sighed. Some of them are coded, some are just rantings, and a few actually provide any insight. But knowing what I do now, there are a few more things I can look up. The Archmage suddenly turned around, like his attention was taken away. Something requires my undivided attention, pardon me. He disappeared. I just shrugged at his sudden departure. I didn't question it. He was undeniably very busy with everything going on. Any inkling on why Harkon was looking for an Elder Scroll? Well, some of his notes that talked about the Elder Scroll also mentioned their great enemy and referenced the sun, but otherwise I don't know. Jin replied. You sure he wasn't just bonkers? Rin asked. It's entirely possible. He did think consorting with Molide Ball, a second time, was a good idea, so who knows? I shrugged. I'm actually interested in this and everything, but I'm super out of it right now. Any chance we can go over this in the morning? Rin stated, and after taking another look, she looked rather sluggish. I'm a bit weary from our travels as well. Artoria added, I want an actual bed. I'm tired of sleeping on the ground. Rin whined, head falling to the table. Well, I finally got my house anchored here. I have plenty of rooms over there. I offered. Oh, I can show you what I've done with the place. Jin said gleefully. You did more. Aha. Jin nodded happily. Meridia was very helpful when getting everything sorted and helping me decorate. Huh. As strange as that is, I'm glad Meridia is spending time with Jin. They both need more friends. That reminds me, I turned to Rin. Did Meridia approach you about getting a phone made? No, was she supposed to? She mentioned it, but may have gotten busy. Do you have the materials to start making more? I got most of the stuff. I just need some raw materials, most of which I can find here somewhere. Rin nodded. Probably going to need several more. God, you're such a man-whore. Rin rolled her eyes. Jin needs one. Obviously, the old man too, even if he probably already made one himself. Saber need her own. She began listing them off, making Artoria smile. Meridia, like you said. You want a couple for Yasaka and your daughter. And maybe one for Izzy in the future. I thought about it. You know, it might just be easier to make a sort of routing device, a mystic code that can direct real-time calls to us regardless of where we are due to the phones instead of everyone needing a phone. The thought just entered my head. Rin paused for a moment, deliberating. That would probably be more efficient, but I'm nowhere close to being able to do that right now. I'll need more data from this kaleidophones before I start creating any theories. That's fair. I couldn't really ask for much more. It would be a decent undertaking if the thought turned out to be fruitful. Just a random thought for later. I shrugged. It wasn't my intention to just heap some stuff onto her plate. Well, why don't we go check out my house? Please, I wasn't looking forward to sleeping on the beds here. Rin looked rather grateful. We walked through the front door, Rin and Artoria inspecting the area immediately. Did you really link it up with a closet at the college? Rin deadpanned. Well, you see. He put the house down over by White Run and forgot I can't open portals like he can. Jin said dryly. I'm not even surprised. Rin didn't react otherwise. So how does the plumbing and lights work here? I can't imagine the infrastructure would stay intact after using the kaleidoscope to pull it across several worlds. Magic. I smiled. She gave me a flat look. Fine. I grumbled. Actually, the house is in Yasaka's little pocket dimension that houses West Kyoto, home to a large portion of Japan's supernatural population. Mostly everything there is built through magical means, including the houses. The hot water heater is powered by magic. The lighting in here is powered by magic. There are several large-scale rituals all around the property that focus on pulling in magical energy and converting to for the house's purpose. Wait, really? Aren't those kinds of rituals rare back home? Rin looked surprised. Not in the way you think. There just isn't much a need for that kind of thing. Magical energy doesn't immediately denote mystery, which is why the Mages Association was built where it is. While the magical energy there is much denser than most other parts of the earth, it's the fact that Albion's corpse also exudes a very dense amount of mystery to saturate the area. Yes, such rituals are rare, simply because everything is rare back home, not even because of resource problems. Every scrap of knowledge is hoarded like it's a treasure. I paused for a moment collecting my thoughts. If you think about it, many types of magic circles act just as these do, but on a smaller and more specific scale. I get it. Rin yawned, stretching her arms. I'll care more in the morning when I get a better look. For now, can you just show us around? Sure. I smiled, getting my bearings. Jin did a wonderful job decorating. It have a very welcoming feel. Artoria added as well. Meridia needs credit too. She did help me. Jin preened under the praise. Of course, when she's not busy, I'll make sure to pass it on. Really, I'm very lucky that all my girls are getting along like this. Anyways, let's start the tour. I began to lead them to the back. This is where I'm keeping my treasury. I pushed open a door, revealing an absurd amount of material wealth. I fucking hate you. Rin hissed. Your anger fuels my existence. I smiled, continuing onwards. A few doors down, I pushed into another room. And this is the library. My library. Jin corrected. Jin's library. I didn't argue. She's been doing a wonderful job of getting everything sorted and set up. There was even a table where she had been going over a bunch of journals, what I'm assuming were the ones that led her to us in the first place. Oh, it's still a mess. Wilhelm left me with a bunch of stuff to handle, and I've been going through it in my spare time. I would offer to help if I didn't know you enjoyed it. I gave her hand a little squeeze. Jin just giggled, leaning over to place a kiss on my cheek. Feel free to browse and take anything that catches your interest. Rin took a few looks around. Yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that. She mumbled, still clearly tired but a bit expectant. All right, only one more important place to check out. I led them out once again. We moved towards the center of the house, where my anchor was located. It was moved to a less open location once everything settled. This is the heart of the house. I gestured as they all entered. The magics that keep it afloat, and where all the defenses pull their strength from. Speaking of, I might as well go over what I've got going on so far. There were stacks of talismans lined up, dozens of spell scrolls, and about 50 stays lined up on the walls, with much more of each to be coming. Basically, you got the standard package of bounded fields and anything else like that I thought to throw in. Then we have the next layer, if something can make it past those. Then all of these activate at the whims of whoever is here at the time, most likely Jinn, and they are bombarded with an uncountable number of spells. What happens if these are not enough? Artoria-eyed everything. At that point, we're dealing with something beyond mortal abilities, so the final fail-safe pulls the house back to my birth world. I see. Artoria nodded. I'm also adding more. Got a guy who's scouring the market for more of the same to add to my arsenal. I explained. Several thousand staves all firing in tandem will slow down most things below a god. How much magical energy will that take? Rin also looked around. A lot, but not as much as you would first assume. I smiled. Again, interesting, but I'm running on fumes here. Rin yawned once more. Bed. I have a few rooms set up. I'll show them to you, so you may pick one. Jinn happily suggested. And like that, you're my favorite genie. Rin accepted immediately, barely even waiting for acknowledgement before pulling Jinn away. You going with her? I asked Artoria. I admit to being mentally exhausted through the adventure. She looked a little hesitant. I know I have been away for a while, and we have not spent much time together. I flicked her forehead, earning a little surprised noise from her. You don't need to explain yourself to me. Just because we're in a relationship doesn't mean we have to involve ourselves with every moment of each other's lives. I did wrap my arms around her. The time we spent apart did make me miss her. You get to have your own time, your own adventures. I'll always be here waiting for you, just like how you were for me when I was jumping around. Will, she whispered, burying her head in my chest. You have been very good to me. I don't know what to say. I am very happy with you as my boyfriend. You're so cute it makes it hard for me to let you go. I kissed her forehead. Once you've rested for a bit, and Rin regains her bearing, I hope you can join me in some sparring. Sparring? She perked up. I've been picking up my training recently. I was going to head over to Thorum and work on my Thursday with him as well. I would be happy to spar with you, Wilhelm. She smiled brightly. Mayhaps we seek out Sasaki Kojiro for some bouts with him as well. That is a brilliant idea. I completely forgot about him. I suppose Rin is probably getting impatient, waiting for you. She grunted. Rin is still very on guard. Oh. I blinked at her statement. Having to constantly be on the lookout for days at a time, I hadn't even considered how she was still stressing over certain things like that even now that she is relatively safe and could let her guard down. It is to be expected. Her last time in such a situation was the Grail War, but she was a bit more naive then. Mayhaps this experience brought up some memories of then. Even so, I think she's handling it well. She only looked tired, not anything else I could see on the surface. I guess we should just keep an eye out. Therapy isn't a bad choice if she does have some issues to work through. Gods know I probably need it as well. Something to consider. Artoria nodded. I should probably go. She looked at me expectantly. I leaned down and pressed my lips to hers, her arm moving up to cup my cheek. Sleep well. I said my goodbyes as we separated. She gave one last smile before shuttling off up the stairs towards the bedrooms. Peeking out the window, the sun was still high up in the sky because it was barely past noon. I just chuckled, opting to go get some training done. I hoped Thorum was available. I popped over to Whiterun and practically made a beeline for the Companions building. As I got close, I heard noise, the sound of steel against steel from behind the building in the courtyard. Opting to go check it out, I saw my friend sitting to the side with a cup of water in his hand and sweat dripping down his brow. There were others there. Some I recognized and others I didn't. Actually, there looked to be a few in some guard outfits, partially taken off, training with the Companions. My friend! Thorum exclaimed, grabbing everyone's attention. Hey, Thorum! I greeted, even at his sudden shout and the attention that I now had on me, seeing how happy he was to see me always brought a smile to my face. You disappeared for several days. I had wondered where you had run off to. He stood up, clasping me on the shoulder. Oh, some idiots wanted to make a move on me. Decided to go have a chat with their leader. I briefly explained. I didn't really want to go into the details. I feel like Thorum would be upset that I went and fought the vampires on my own. I also got in some good training. Wonderful. It's always good to keep up with your exercises. Thorum nodded in approval. Red Dragon Emperor. One of the faces I didn't recognize greeted. Wilhelm. Ela nodded to me as well, propping herself up with a warhammer. I thought she used a sword and bow, but I didn't question it. Good to see you again, mage. Farkas also greeted beside her. The way he called me that didn't hold any kind of insult behind it. Perhaps just a simple nickname or acknowledgement on his part. Good to see you lot in good shape, though I haven't seen some of their other numbers, even when we partied before. I guess they're out on missions air, or they're throughout Skyrim. Thorum hefted Graham over his shoulder. My friend, have you come to join us in training? He gestured to the area. We welcome all who wish to better themselves in these troubling times. Huh, that makes sense then. The companions are probably some of the best this place has to offer for mundane warriors, besides those odd ones. It would do good for the average guard to come on over during their free time. Not to mention the morale boost it would give the troops. I wondered if this was the Jarl's idea, or Thorum just coincidentally setting it up by being a good guy. Honestly, I'd give it 50-50 odds. Actually, I did. Oh. Thorum didn't seem to expect my answer. Do you wish to test your blade against me then? He smiled, holding his own sword up in a good-natured taunt. Actually, that sounds like fun. Now that I thought about it, I should make sure I use this opportunity to train with him too. Artoria will probably come by soon. I don't doubt she'd also like to cross blades with you. You're a woman, huh? Thorum nodded. I will gladly greet her with my blade when the time comes. But that does not appear to be the reason you are here. You're right, I replied. I wanted your help on my Thursday. To be honest, I've kind of neglected it for other avenues of training. Oh, I would be honored. Thorum let out a laugh. I did say I would teach you a thing or two when we first separated from the throat of the world. It might be a better idea to go to see the Greybeards. They didn't seem to dislike me. But for some reason I felt it more appropriate to learn from Thorum. Someone sounds cocky. I gave a small laugh. How about I teach you a couple things about magic while we're at it? That would be great. I was stuck on my studies and did not know how to proceed. Thorum didn't even hide it. Idiot, if you needed help you just had to ask. Got somewhere we can make a mess? I asked. Well, we can always do it outside the city. Thorum offered. I shrugged. Why not? We can give them a little show too. Might raise the overall spirits of the people here if they can see the Dragonborn shouting without the threat of a dragon burning them. I was looking forward to this. Besides the training, I did have some time to kill. I was waiting for Jin to give me a lead on this so-called Elder Scroll, and for Artoria and Rin to come on over when they're up and rested. I will make sure not to embarrass you too much. He had that big goofy smile on his face. Then be fighting words. I snorted, my lips curling up. Let's see if you can keep up.